Matthew 24. Please go check out the previous part to gauge your bearings. We're talking about something here. I'm ultimately going to piece together my argument in a way that's comprehensible, so you're gonna have to watch the first part to understand what we're talking about. But if you're bandwagoning from here, then I guess alright, okay. And Jesus answered them. I was reading Matthew 24. I last ended with where it is that basically I am the Christ. People call themselves Jesus. Yeah. And Jesus answered them, see that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places, and all these are but the beginning of birth pains. So just in this particular part, like, I told you guys in the first part that I came across a short on YouTube that was recommended to me of this very happy 37-year-old woman, heavily pregnant with her first child after struggling for very many years to conceive. And the comment section was incredibly encouraging because it was full of all of these older women that all got married really late and got babies really late. They basically testified of how it is that God laughed at their plans, but then he ultimately pulled through for them. And upon gaining encouragement there, I then thought that maybe my husband is still coming, until I got out from that comment section and into YouTube as I know it. And there were all these bulletins, all of these other videos that I tend to watch on the daily, showing me that I should rather be looking up and lifting up my head, for my redemption is drawing nigh. Because yes, I get that people are still marrying, being given in marriage, like I just saw in that short, but there's also all this too. All these things are happening in unison. They're happening in parallel to each other. So what under heaven am I looking forward to? Exactly. So here it says that you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. This whole thing that happened on the 7th of October, Hamas going into Israel. So Israel is God's prophetic timepiece. The world literally revolves around Israel because that's how it is that God set it apart. When we look at that direction, all right, that is when under heaven it is that we can basically gauge whether or not whatever it is that we all else are going through in all of our other countries, if it's just another day that's progressing where mankind is doing rubbish on the earth, or if this time around it's really prophetically significant. We look at Israel. So the wickedness in your own country, if it is mapped or aligned against whatever is going on in the Middle East, that's a good gauge of where we find ourselves. And yes, indeed, right now, what's going on in the Middle East. So on the 7th of October, we know that Israel was invaded, like it was just crashed into by Hamas. They've ever since then responded. We know there's a war now there. As a result of this war, there is just so much else going on in the Middle East. So much else is happening. And it's almost as if though this thing that's happening with Israel and Hamas is going to ultimately result in World War III because of who in the world under heaven is responding. So Yemen keeps on taking ships over and wreaking some handsome havoc. Israel, because of the conflicts that they're constantly enduring from all the fronts around them, have to retaliate and respond back. So they're not only firing shots into Gaza, they just recently fired shots into Iran, and they fired shots into Syria. And in Syria, so in Iran, some Revolutionary Guard Corps cops or whatever, popo, like even commanders died. And Iran is out here threatening, we're going to retaliate for what you did to us. And then, who is this? In Syria, the strikes therein, Iran is busy telling Israel, stop with all of your rubbish, even against Syria or else. Okay? Usually Iran uses proxies, like they're backed militia groups, in order to fight. They don't tend to get their own hands dirty. But now Iran is getting its own hands dirty and fighting Israel. So that is something that is worthy of noting. The fact that Iran is fighting itself against Israel. So this is like brewing up. It's a powder keg. America and Britain are involved in it. They keep on firing shots and injuring American soldiers as they are responding in the whole maritime situation, the issue at sea with Yemen, and blocking ships from coming in. From basically trading normally, and what under heaven that means globally for the oil trade. is that prices are going to skyrocket and therefore affect all of our countries because of what Yemen is doing at sea over there, and with all of these other countries having to basically take the long route just to get their whole trade basically to continue happening in order that they might be covered by insurance. That's happening, okay? And then the strikes in Syria, because of Vladimir Putin's relationship with Syria. Historically, we all know that Vladimir Putin was very, I can't really say standoffish, but he sort of kind of did not get involved whenever Israel would strike Syria or do whatever, even though he's got his own men, feet on the ground in Syria. That's what's good. But this time around, Vladimir Putin, for whatever reason, has decided to basically say, Israel, you better stop shooting Syria or else. And he has sent his own men on the ground there. And for me, it's like, okay, already there was already a presence of Russia in Syria, right? But from what I understand, apparently, allegedly, more have been sent because Vladimir Putin is now prepared to fight. So Putin is no longer essentially what would be the equivalent or the tantamount of neutral in this matter. It's becoming increasingly polarized in favor of the Islamic nations and against Israel. So Putin appears to be taking a stand, and that looks like the battle of Gog and Magog. Over and above it, I found out that some French soldiers were killed in the Ukraine by Putin's men who targeted a French base in Ukraine, killing, I think, everybody at that base, or a whole bunch of French soldiers. And so that caused Emmanuel Macron to go to the Ukraine and is essentially then entering the war that Vladimir Putin has declared on the Ukraine. It looks as if though France is about to go in there. I need to think because my brain is kind of scattered right now. I'm looking at my edits. Yeah, it looks as like, who's this? Who is this? Emmanuel Macron may very potentially essentially fight back against Russia. So the war in the Ukraine could be multi-fronted now. There could be more than one country involved in shooting back at Russia. So with that happening, Vladimir Putin is going to have to tighten or stiffen his alliances with Islamic nations, even at the expense of Israel. And that could explain why it is that Vladimir Putin is now all of a sudden not neutral in Syria. And he is trying to tell Israel what to do there. Stop shooting Damascus or else. Stop, you get my point. Putin's lack of neutrality is something that Israel cannot afford right now. So it appears that Jerusalem is starting, Zechariah 12. Jerusalem is starting to look very much like a cup of trembling. It's been looking like a cup of trembling, but more so now than ever is it looking like a cup of trembling. And all the nations that are surrounding it, that are trying to heave it away, God is going to cut to pieces. But that happens in the last days. And then there is the whole rubbish by my country, South Africa. Whatever, I don't care about this country. Yesterday I spoke at length about how much I hate this land, and if at all the rapture doesn't happen, I gotta move out of South Africa. I have to leave because it just does not represent my heart cry, and it is judged entirely as a country because of its stand against Israel. South Africa has taken some genocide silly case to the somewhere in Hague, I don't know, ICJJ, that commission. Yeah, that's happening. And so the reason why that's even happening is because South Africa is taking a stand with Iran. So South Africa is among the countries that God is going to heave away. South Africa is one of the countries that are trying to heave Israel, Jerusalem, away. And so it's surely going to be cut to pieces. So the thing that I was shown prophetically in a dream where the Lord was like, your country, South Africa, is going to cease to be a nation. I see now where that's coming from, because South Africa is one of the countries that are trying to heave away Jerusalem. And it's allying with all of the nations that hate God against Israel. And so now here it is that this silly BRICS alliance is out here trying to poke away at the apple of God's eye. And that is not something that is going to happen in a detrimental capacity until the very end of the end. So yes, wars and rumors of wars have been happening for a minute, but never in the history of the earth have wars encircled Israel. Never have they all just kind of happened to taper or tailor, what does this cater to? The war in the Middle East, the war of which is also messing with trade and industry across the world and messing with oil prices and all that jazz. When you mess with oil prices, rider on, is it black, right? The horse. Which is the famine horse? A quarter wheat for a denarius, a day's wages for a loaf of bread. Do not harm the oil and the wine. It's one of the riders, okay, of the apocalypse. One of the horsemen of the apocalypse brings with him famine. And before this rider gallops out, there has got to be the stage on the world set to create global lack of resources, global lack of food. Therefore, being among the resources that the world needs. And if you mess with the price of oil, you mess with that which fuels transportation that gets food across the world. And so, if at all the price of oil skyrockets, the price of food will inevitably skyrocket, because to get food from point A to point B, you need oil, you need gas, you need petrol, you need whatever fuels these massive ships that transport wheat and blah blah across the planet. And to supplement their losses because of having to pay much more exorbitant prices for oil, they're going to increase prices for everything, for food, for clothes. Basically, guys, shipping, what I'm trying to explain is global trade is going to be a lot more expensive to do because of the traveling of goods across oceans. And that's going to increase the price of everything. Food, clothes, anything at all that can be put in a ship, in an airplane, to basically arrive at any country. So we are looking at the horseman of the apocalypse that is on the black horse over there. The one with the pair of scales in his hands. Which one is it? The white horse came, what is this? The white horse is the Antichrist. The red horse is the one that brings a lot of disaster, like wars and stuff, right? Yeah, like people fighting each other and what have you. Was permitted to take, okay, let me just read Revelation 6 from 2. And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. So that's the Antichrist. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so all the striving, so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. And in that, this one is one that I'm talking about now. I mean, these things are just, they appear to be happening so swimmingly. Like the whole foreshadowing of it all is all up in everybody's grill. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a black horse. I did say black, right? Was I right over there? A black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." What Yemen is doing is it the Red Sea or what? Like they're in the ocean, with all taking those ships and endangering those waters, such that companies that use that trade route cannot travel there anymore. They have to go around the long route using more oil, and also to make sure that the insurance companies will be able to pay should anything happen to those ships in that particular region. Yeah, that whole thing is going to increase prices of goods across the world. For everything that at all can be shipped using those routes. And so there's going to be a quart of wheat for a denarius and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and don't harm the oil and the wine, the oil of which is under siege, under threat, etc. right now. And it's all happening so quickly, like it's just Sonic the Hedgehog, like it's the Flash. It's happening so fast, like yo, can't nobody catch up. Nobody can catch up. It's happening on the daily. Like every week it's something very significant that is going on over here. And nations are throwing their lot in with whoever they will throw their lot in. But there is certainly a cup of staggering appearing to be the status of Jerusalem. Just the other day, there was an attack by Hezbollah on the Iron Dome in Israel, and it has gotten Israelis quite shook. This happened, I believe, last week. It had to be last week because it's Monday today. It's the 22nd of January. It had Israelis shook because the only reason, oh, by the way, yeah, look, okay, let's just put, South Africa's out trying to accuse Israel for genocide, but you don't call it genocide when it's war, especially if it is a war that has frankly been declared on you, okay? Israel does try to eradicate war casualties as much as possible out of the Palestinian people. They go out of their way to avoid them, unlike what it is that Hamas did. Hamas performed an act of terrorism while Israel responded by basically declaring war on them. In war, there are casualties, so you cannot be taking people to no strange courts and claiming that they are committing genocide when it's war. There are two types of killings here on earth. There is murder, and then there is combat and battle. And in combat, people die. And that's what's happening with Israel. Go Gaza. They also take into comprehension all the laws, international laws, and also laws of proportionality in terms of the basically civilian casualties, right? That will be endured in Gaza in war. But it must be highlighted. Let's just put this out there. When you've got good armament, when you've got a vest on you that is bulletproof, and somebody shoots a gun at you, and you survive because of your bulletproof vest, that individual that tried to shoot you could have committed murder, but they were seized from committing murder by your bulletproof vest, but they have committed attempted murder. If you did not have that vest on, you would have died. So just because you've got a really great vest on that protects you from dying when somebody is shooting at you does not make out of you more heinous in fighting back against those who are trying to kill you. So when there's like a hail of bullets coming at you, landing in your bulletproof vest and protecting you from ceasing to exist, and then you release a hail of bullets into the ecosystem that's shooting at you, and they get knocked out because none of them are wearing a bulletproof vest, on that day, you have not committed genocide. You have had war declared on you, and you responded, and in so shooting them, they just so happen to not have had bulletproof vests on. Israel has got this bulletproof vest called the Iron Dome over its entire country. Yeah, this Iron Dome intercepts missiles coming from everywhere, from Gaza, from Lebanon, from Iran, wherever it is that they might be coming from. All of these proxies all over the show, Iranian-backed proxies dwelling in that region that is so hostile against Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's what's good. They keep on just kind of hitting a brick wall. So the number of casualties, civilian and otherwise, in Israel are significantly reduced because they've got a bulletproof vest on. So just because they've got a weapons defense system that is really excellent to protect the country does not mean that just because they have it does not mean that they're not being attacked. If Israel did not have that Iron Dome, on the daily there would be thousands of casualties in Israel because of all the fire that keeps on coming at them from their surrounding nations. So this war by Hamas, this terror by Hamas that was committed against Israel, if at all they did not have, like I said, the Iron Dome, the same number of civilian casualties that is being experienced in Gaza right now would likely be getting experienced in Israel. It is highly likely that that's the case, but Israel has got an Iron Dome. So countries like South Africa, my own little deadbeat backyard, yeah, that are out here claiming that genocide is being committed. First of all, there's a difference between genocide and terror. There is a difference between war and genocide. Crimes of war, like just terrorizing a land unprovoked because you can, versus defending yourself as a country because now you're at war. Massive difference. Crimes against humanity are things like rape in the middle of war, are things like taking babies and putting them in ovens and switching them on. That's terror. Israel does not do that. It is shooting arms, basically, fire into Gaza in the attempt of uprooting Hamas. It's why it's even done a ground invasion in the first place. It is in order to minimize civilian casualties. Gazan, Hamasian, whatever, soldiers of which are also shooting into Israel, however, with limited success because of their defense system. So when South Africa just does not consider such facts of the case, saying as they've made it a whole judiciary issue, when they don't consider such facts of the case and they just blanket run with like a terrorist regime as a democratic country to stand for terror in the Middle East, and so therefore inevitably against South Africa, against anybody at all that is with Christian Judeo principles. South Africa is literally standing on the wrong side of history, and it is standing for Islamic terror at the expense of Christian Judeo principles in its own country and the rights of Christians and Jews across the world. They have made them feel as if though all such things don't matter, and so we do not feel safe in our own country. And everywhere across the world, anti-Semites are celebrating, anti-Christians are celebrating because one more country has hated God. That's what's going on. They don't take such facts into consideration. They do not look at all of these details in order to understand why the casualties in Gaza, in comparison to casualties in Israel, are so high. They're high because they ain't got no Iron Dome. They're high because the people have been left destitute, desolate. They're high because their own little Hamas has started to build terror tunnels underneath their schools, decided to build terror tunnels underneath their hospitals, because their own Hamas has decided to use human beings as human shields. That's why the stats are so bad. So if at all, the Hamas terrorists were humanitarian, if at all they actually cared about the people of Gaza, the numbers would be significantly lower. The only reason why there's such heavy survival rates in Israel is because the government there actually cares about people. That's why the numbers are so low. And that is also why Hezbollah went for the Iron Dome. That's why the Iron Dome was attacked, because they frustrated these nations around Israel with the fact that they can't quite do the damage they want to do because of the Iron Dome. They can't do the damage that they want because of the Iron Dome. But that is just a fulfillment of Zechariah 12, isn't it? The nations around Israel, Jerusalem is going to become a cup of trembling, a very heavy stone for all peoples, and all who would heave it away will surely be cut into pieces. So, of course, Jerusalem, Israel, is a heavy stone right now, and people are trying to heave it away. And so we are looking at more or less a typology or a foreshadowing of the rider on the red horse. Lots of peace being taken away from the earth. Look at the peace that has been stripped away from me and my deadbeat country. Yeah. And this here is causing the rider on the black horse to also come up, I guess, and ride out and say, look, everybody's going to be starving now. Everybody's going to go hungry. This unrest that is causing basically the commencement, the beginning stages, the horsemen of the apocalypse are getting about ready to gallop, because the stage has been set for them to gallop easily, fluently. The stage has been set for them. Basically, the rider on the white horse that's going to conquer and basically take over every country in fostering like peace for however many years, that stage has been set. So too has the stage for war at unprecedented levels been set. The stage for hunger at unprecedented levels has been set. And the stage for, therefore, as a result of all that, death, which is the rider on the pale horse that comes next, or green, whatever the color you want to call it. Yeah, the stage has been set. So if at all the horsemen are going to gallop one after the other swimmingly, the world needs to kind of look like whatever under heaven it is that it looks like today. It has to look like this. This is the perfect ecosystem for the white horse to come out easily, and the rest thereafter. Jerusalem is currently more a cup of trembling than it ever has been before. And it keeps on being a cup of staggering in increasing measure on a week by week basis. It's actually shocking how quickly everything is happening, how fast everything is happening. It's just really shocking. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you really? Do you? Because if you're not looking at these things, you're going to be caught off guard. You're going to make out of yourself a little messiah. You're going to want to rescue a woman that you feel as if, though, I mean, goodness, I woke up to hear the sentiment of certain people calling me a pretty hobo. God. A pretty hobo. Hobo entle. That's how men are looking at me. Like I'm begging. They think this here is the act of desperation. Except it's written in God's word that David was young and then he got old. Yet never had he seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging for bread. Do I look like a beggar? But just by mere virtue of having close to nothing to my name, I am being looked at as a pretty hobo. And when you're a little pretty hobo, according to some pretty licentious Janus and Jambres entitled men, they're gonna try and slide into your DMs, seeking to burden you with passions just as Janus and Jambres do. 2 Timothy 3, perilous times have come. Please, go and read the Bible. Read the Bible, you guys. These wars and rumors of wars, it is no longer rumors now. It's just wars. It's just wars, and it keeps on ramping up, and Jerusalem is becoming increasingly a cup of staggering. It is and people are trying to heave it away. It's a heavy stone for all the peoples, and they are trying to heave it away. Vladimir Putin, thanks to declaring war on the Ukraine, cannot be neutral with Israel, and he is increasingly siding with his BRICS peoples. He is increasingly, the fact that he could not be impartial with the Syria issue is scary. It's scary. But here it is that Macron is now looking at him on some, hey, you just shot my soldiers in the Ukraine. You came against a military base full of Frenchmen. You then on that day poked at me as France. Like, why did you do that? We are looking, remember I told you that The Simpsons predicted that there will be World War III in 2024. I spoke about that just 2 or 3 or 4 days ago. And now look at what in the world is going on. These are the other news headlines, the bulletins, the other recommended videos that I saw on YouTube after coming out of the other one, where I was basically made to feel a little bit better about my childless state and my husbandless state, my lifeless state. Yeah, I was all encouraged, but then I looked around and I was like, what exactly is going to happen here? Am I going to be Sarah getting my baby late? Am I going to be that woman that ultimately gets everything? But how can I be when the whole, how is this going to end? Like, this cannot end well. World War III, whether or not we know it, essentially commenced on the 7th of October, 2023. We just don't know it yet. Like, this thing going on in the Middle East is going to spark World War III. Why? Because look at Macron's reaction to Vladimir Putin's little missiles in the Ukraine. And what is this? Vladimir Putin, as a result of Emmanuel Macron now looking at him sideways, is backing away from supporting Israel because he can't afford to, given that now France is looking at him on some Wednesday. So he needs all the support he can get. Otherwise, he's not going to win this war in the Ukraine. He's going to come out there very embarrassed. So this time around, Iran likely was like, this time you're all in. You better be all in, because look at how you done shot the French military base in the Ukraine. Now you better take a stand in a way that is solid. You can't be quiet anymore. You can't be complacent. Pick a side. And he did. He picked a side and frankly told Israel not to keep on shooting into Syria. And we all know that Israel's going to do that. It's going to do that. And not only that, Emmanuel Macron, Putin's men in Syria are out here retaliating against Israel in a way that they never historically did. So essentially, what is going on here is that Israel is going to keep on shooting, and then Putin is then going to shoot back. And when Israel is out here shooting, understanding that Putin is standing with Iran, we're looking at Damascus being turned into a ruinous heap. All who would heave it away will be surely cut into pieces. And then the hostilities that are going to rise up in Gog, the hostilities that are going to rise up in Russia, Iran, Ethiopia, and Yemen, all of those countries around, basically whatever might be the coalition of nations that form that's Ezekiel 37, 38, 39 war, yeah, Gog and Magog, that's going to be an inevitability, which is why I believe that potentially that war happens just at the beginning of the tribulation, the Gog and Magog war. I mean, just look at the world. Look at the decisions countries in their insobriety are making. They're like drunk on flaka and nyaupe, and they are making the wrong decisions, but they're making them because it's prophecy coming to pass. They cannot avoid it. It is the beginning from the end has been proclaimed from on high, and it's going to happen as the Lord said it's going to happen. So the futility of those who are thinking about 500 rands that I get from my mother once a month is precisely expected of mankind in the last days. There's so much lawlessness, and because of an increase in it, the love of many is growing cold. People are focusing on all the dumb stuff. Lovers of money, lovers of self, boastful, proud, etc. 2 Timothy 3, please go read moral turpitude therein. When you're that flaccid and fluffy and shallow in the midst of Jerusalem being a cup of trembling and the world falling apart at the seams like this, you will of course not be able to see what you ought to see. You will only see what you call a pretty hobo out of a woman, instead of a woman watching for Christ that wants to hope in the husband, wants to hope in the children, wants to hope in the late recovery to a normal life, but can't see it because of everything else that's going on in the world. Everything else that's going on in the world. I just cannot see a future. I can't. I'm struggling to. I'm trying to some days, but I'm just not doing a good job at it because it's really hard with all the data at my disposal. to ever conclude that I actually have any future. Here, anyway. I mean, the Lord says, mark the righteous man, for there is a future for the man of peace. I do have a future, just not here. Like I told you, God does not disappoint. So he's going to ultimately give me what I desire, what I need. And I will not be disappointed in his provision for me. I don't know how it's going to come, but I just know what I'm looking around at. And it's all very troubling. Except the Lord said that we should not be troubled. Jesus said to them, see that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name, saying I'm the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars, rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation. I just explained that. And kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of birth pains. And I mean, we all know, in terms of weather, that famines and earthquakes in various places has just been a thing that's going on for a very long amount of time. And it's happening in increasing measure. If you just look at global meteorological sites for the trend of earthquake activity on the earth for the past like 50 years, maybe even 60, 70 years, you will notice an exponential increase in the number of earthquakes that are happening, the frequency of them, as well as the intensity. There is an increase in all such activity. Like I said, all you got to do is just look at the stats, look at the numbers, look closely, grab a magnifying glass. It's not like it's always been. It's not all the common disturbances that tend to happen on the earth as we go from day to day, from decade to decade. It's not like it used to be. It's not just regular earth striving as it's always been. It's literally different this time. Anyway, where was I? And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of the birth pains. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Is that not what is already happening in many parts of the world? We just come from a New Year's Eve where it is that in Nigeria there were butcherings of so many Christians. It's happening all across the world. We are the largest, most persecuted single religion on the earth, followed closely by Jews. Christians and Jews are the most persecuted groups on the earth, and then all the other religions. That is not a mistake. And the next one that's coming, okay, then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And this is the one that I wanted to talk about. And then many will fall away. Yesterday, then many will fall away. Yesterday, after watching that short from YouTube with the pregnant lady, I then continued to watch shorts. Okay, and guys, I don't even know if I can still see this short. This phone is not, it's gonna disappoint me because it's not plugged in to the right charger. But there is a short that I saw on YouTube showing the dominance of global religions as the years progressed, and you will cry. How do we know that we're at the end of the very end of the very end? On the day when Christianity starts to falter, flounder, fall behind any other religion in the world. For centuries, Christianity was the dominant religion across the world, and it was growing in increasing measure, fulfilling Bible prophecy that the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ will be preached to all nations, and then the end will come. When there is a decline in that trend, when there is a plateau, when there is the gospel is being, the reception of God is decreasing at an increasing rate, therefore creating an exponential decline of the adoption of the Christian faith. We are at the end. The adoption of Christianity is decreasing at an increasing rate. That is an exponential decline. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that time has been prophesied to happen. So we don't lose heart when it happens. But it is at this time when it's happening that we should look up and lift up our heads, for our redemption draweth nigh. Many will fall away. This great apostasy has also been described in 1st or 2nd Thessalonians somewhere, where it is written that, before the man of lawlessness is revealed, there must be a great falling away first. and the restrainer must be removed. And then you will see the abomination that causes desolation. These things can be paralleled next to each other. Matthew 24, some of the books, the script in 1st or 2nd Thessalonians, the whole book of Revelation, the book of Daniel. You get my point. All the eschatological texts that you can put together, you literally can piece them side by side next to each other and see the chronology of events. See how it is that everything is going to decline. And so therefore, when all of these things are happening all at the same time, culminating together in one setting in history, this is it then. It's it. And in the 21st century, for the first time in centuries, since the gospel got preached to all the nations and filled the earth, Christianity the adoption of Christianity is decreasing at an increasing rate, while it has lost its position as the fastest growing religion in the world. And while it's also losing the numbers of people that are saved at any given moment. We got taken over by Islam. Remember what I told you guys with Nigeria, how it is that it's got like 50-50%, like 50% Christians, 50% Muslims. That's the Nigerian religious landscape. Well, because of having half the population be Islamic, there is so much persecution of Christians, especially in, I said the other day, the south of Nigeria. No, it's not the south, it's the north of Nigeria. Well, the north of Nigeria. There's so much butchering of Christians happening in a half and half country. Half and half. You would imagine that what would be required in order for that level of genocide to happen against Christians would be maybe 70%. Like what's happening maybe in a Middle Eastern country. 70%, 80, 90% of the country is Muslim. But no. All it took for there to be so much Christian persecution in Nigeria was for there to be half Muslims and then half Christians. 50-50. 50-50, guys. And now they are plowing, pillaging, massacring largely the most impoverished portions of Nigeria, killing them. And the information is not making the news. It is not being aired on mainstream media. They don't care when we get massacred. They don't care. They are trying to ignore when Jews get massacred, but that gets covered too much. They are trying not to care when Christians get massacred. They're not giving it the airtime that it needs. And we have to get this information from independent sources that want to highlight it, or other mainstream sources that are happy to highlight it, but they are increasingly getting outnumbered by mainstream media that is trying to keep it on the hush-hush. Joe Biden, in some funny year, soon as he took presidency, removed Nigeria from one of the most persecuting countries in the world. He removed it. Why? When just on Christmas Eve, and then the rest of the days following after Christmas, they butchered a whole bunch of Christians in villages in Nigeria. But like I said, 50-50, all that it was needed for that level of terrorism to happen against the body of Christ by extremist Islamist militia. All that was required was for them to have basically 50% of the numbers in the country. All that was required was half the land to be like that, evidencing the apostasy. Because according to the scriptures, one Christian brings down 1,000 and two brings down 10,000. That I believe could be in Psalm 91 or somewhere. I stand corrected. Okay, yeah. There is a lot of power in one Christian. And so if at all a population was truly 50% Christians, there is no way under heaven that there would have been that level of Christian persecution by another half of the country that's doing wickedness. Why? Because God would have given them victory over their enemies. Because they are mighty in comparison to an army of unbelievers. But the thing about a false religion is that there's a lot of hatred. There is a lot of malice and a lot of desire to just coup and take over by force and by any means necessary. So the moment they have the numbers, they stand more together in unison with each other against the other group to take them over in a way that complacent, unprayerful, unconsecrated, lukewarm, Sardian, having a reputation for being alive even though they're dead, wannabe Christians just stand no chance against a malicious religious group that is taking over like a gangrene, a country. So I blame in Nigeria the weak piety of the church. It's not pious. It's not the church. It is charlatans. It's the falling away. In that 50% population of Christians, I wouldn't be surprised if literally a single digit percentage is actually truly born again. And when then the true body of Christ is that small, albeit so many people claiming to be Christian, when then there's 50% of Islamist jihadists come in and plow villages, and they're proper, people are gonna, like, there's not going to be any true powerful restoration or recompense or recovery of a people that have been terrorized. It's not going to happen. The body of Christ is weak. In Nigeria, just like in South Africa, I keep saying they are playing games, Bakaladiketo or something, Gichigago, some game that they're engaged in, but it's not real church, because if it was real church, we would not just be getting mauled away at like this. And here it is that in South Africa, we're facing a threat of an Islamic takeover. Look at our government are just standing with all these Islamist nations at the expense of Christians and Jews in the country, in a Christian Judeo nation. Nobody under heaven here understands what's going on, except everybody is complacent, la-di-da, and unprepared to do what is right. So it's only a matter of time before Christians in South Africa also have their villages, their shacks in Deep Sluit burnt by a growing Islamic population. What then is going to happen when Islam has just half the numbers? They plow villages and kill people because they trust that the other half ain't going to be able to stand against them. The world as we know it today in the 21st century is already dealing with an Islamic population globally that is now marginally exceeded. It has now marginally exceeded Christianity. Marginally. In other words, there's more or less about 50% Christians on the earth as there are Muslims. And by Christians, just like in Nigeria, I mean professing, not the actual true body of Christ, not actually consecrated people. And if at all, those who profess Allah are now sitting at pretty much like 50-50% on the global scale. They have this more or less the same number of Christians as there are Muslims, and Muslims have taken Christianity over ever so marginally. In the 21st century, that was the first time that happened. What's going to happen? Exactly what's already started to happen. All of this abuse across our countries by Muslims, all of this entitlement, all of this wickedness, this thriving of a global takeover by one religion that is much too violent for any of us to take in our stride. And yet people are in their numbers taking Islam up. Why? Because the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers. How many celebrities do you know who, like, as soon as they get famous in the entertainment industry, they move away from Christianity that they were raised in by their parents and then suddenly join Islam? I Show Speed did that. Some little boy in America. Well, he's a little boy. He acts like a little boy, whatever. He might be an adult, but like he's a little boy. I Show Speed did that. Moved over to Islam. Andrew Tate moved from Christianity to Islam. None of these people were ever saved. Y'all need to understand that. But Andrew Tate recently said that he's coming back to Christianity, right? So he just keeps penduluming between the two. But what I'm trying to explain to you, who's another one? Come on, was raised Christian Judeo, the musician from long ago, and then he became a Muslim somewhere along the way. Yeah, they keep like it's like there is a pull. The devil keeps telling them, do it. This is the better religion. And for whatever reason, even though it's unseemly and it is unloving, it is full of violence, and there is no freedom, especially for women in that religion, for citizens of a country where it is a dominant religion. There is absolutely no incentive for a person that has grown up in the West or in free countries across the world to convert to Islam, because they have displayed in their own countries that they have no respect for human rights. Men have it really good there, but if you come from Western society where women are free, it is unattractive to live in a society like the Middle East, where women have no liberties, where they can't study, where they can't do whatever. So even if you're a misogynist, the world is not the world that you know that you like when you're in the Middle East. And yet there are a whole bunch of Western influenced and countries that are non-Western, but nonetheless Christian and democratic and free. There are so many people that are converting to Islam with there being no real true incentive for them to do so that is feasible, that is seemly, that you can see where they're coming from. They're just converting for, I cannot even explain it, guys. I can't explain it. I cannot understand why you would come from a free Western civilization with your democracy and your human rights and convert to Islam. All I can say is that it's obviously spiritual. It's like mindless drones that are converting because a voice is speaking to them. But they literally are without autonomy. They are not making this decision in their own devices. They are taken over by demons. Because it does not make sense. The growth of Islam on the earth does not make sense. The Islamic takeover of Western nations does not make sense. Because these are some of the freest countries in the world, and yet they are embracing a religion and an ideology that is so stymieing, so stifling, so suffocating, that even men, as chauvinistic and as misogynistic as they potentially could be, living in these freer countries, would hate the state of the world if it were to truly be fully and frustratingly converted over to Islam, yet Islam is taking over Christianity. That is just Bible prophecy being fulfilled. These are earthlings that are walking around as mindless drones, unable to think for themselves. They're not able to think for themselves. This religion has taken over Christianity. all these other religions, the rest of them, like Buddhism, Hinduism has also grown quite significantly, but it is nowhere near catching up with Islam or Christianity. Buddhism, irreligious. Oh, another thing that I noticed, the third largest religion in the world is irreligiousness. So first it's Islam, then Christianity, and then irreligiousness. Now, Satanism has not been considered a religion, and that's the only reason it didn't make that list. But apparently, allegedly, the biggest growing religion in the United States of America is not Islam and it's not Christianity, it's Satanism. What does that tell you guys? It says that America is very likely Babylon, the whore in Revelation, is at 16 or what? Apparently, allegedly, devil worship is growing faster in America than any other country in the world. And it is growing faster in America than any other religion in that country. Not even Islam got anything on devil worship in America. And I thought South Africa was bad. So it explains why it is that I've got this like menacing, heinous stalker all up in my grill that can't stop whipping me with all different kinds of spells. His country's taken over. His country has been taken over by darkness. It is insane. It makes sense. It makes sense. If Satanism is the fastest growing religion in America, it makes sense why they have no regard for gender. It makes sense why the LG whatever community is growing like weeds. It makes sense why they are allowing gender reassignment surgeries to children under the age of 18. It makes sense why they are so obsessed with what is this, like just like do what they will for this, the whole of the law, like children, kids, they can do whatever they want. There's so much disrespect. There's so much mass shootings in schools. There is so much murder of children by children. There is murder there's murder of teachers by children. There is chaos in America in a way that is unprecedented, and I can see why that's the case. Their politicians are nutbags. They're nutbags that are trying to even convince the rest of the world of their nuttery. Do you understand? We've never seen anything like this in America until literally as recently as just the past 5 years, and if we're stretching it, maybe a decade. They were not this crazy 10 years ago, and they were not this crazy 5 years ago. The US, that entertainment industry, is the one that is making Netflix so insufferable. It's the one that makes it that basically shows us pornographic sex scenes between gay men and think that that is a PG-13 movie or a PG-13 show because they're trying to teach people that this here is normal. Well, I mean, of course, on Netflix, a sex scene between two gay men is parental guidance 13, when in American schools, there's books, literature that is recommended reading for children that are in primary school, middle school, primary, what's middle school? Like grade, guys, then I'd say like grade 7 down, okay? Yeah, that is exceptionally pornographic. They are teaching children like all different kinds of elaborate sex, anal sex, oral sex, all that, masturbation with graphics drawn like the way that you would see graphically nude people back in the day in a Playboy magazine. That kind of stuff is being found in literature for children in primary schools in America. Yeah, so it makes sense. You would never have found any such heinous activity just 10 years ago, and I would go so far as to say just 5 years ago. There is an increase in moral turpitude in that country in a way that is increasingly making it look as if though they very potentially could be modern day Babylon. So if modern day Babylon has been set up to be what under heaven that it is, we've already got Revelation 16, the stage for it set, do we not? We've got the stage set for that, do we not? And in that country, like I said, the primary growing religion is Satanism right now. They're not even all that interested in Islam. But the devil does not care if they take Islam or Satanism. But what's important to note is that that religion that is Satanism, basically occult stuff, ancestral worship, all of these other funny little things that people do in dabbling with the darkness, if that was incorporated in that statistic that I saw in that short on YouTube, I would know more or less what devil worship, what the percentage of growing devil worshippers it is on the earth. But all they showed were the old school known religions, right? So Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam. And Islam, like I said, excelled above Christianity. And number 2 was Christianity by a margin. And then number 3, maybe like half, perhaps 30% of what it is that is the number of Christians and the number of Muslims was something called irreligion. Irreligion. In other words, you believe nothing. So atheism is apparently number 3 in the world, and not even Buddhism, not even what do you call this thing, Hinduism, nothing. The majority of people on earth are deistic, but if at all, There are more atheists than there are Hindus, more atheists than there are Buddhists, more atheists than there are Muslims, and more atheists than there are Christians. There are more atheists than there are Buddhists, Hindus, everybody else down below, and less than Christianity and Islam. It says that people, upon observing what is going on in the world and it being just so cantankerous, everything flying off the shelves with no law or no rules at all, people then tell themselves, there can't possibly be a God. I'm not even going to waste my time praying. I'm not going to waste my time meditating. I'm just going to live. Irreligion is number 3. It's written in God's word that when justice is not fulfilled in the land, the heart of man on the ground inclines towards evil. So when you don't give the innocent and the right and the justice at the expense of their perpetrators, everybody that makes an observation of that travesty, everybody that makes an observation of a lack of execution of judgment, at a lack of observance of the rule of law, then go on right ahead and become self-regulated. They become every man does what is right in their own eyes. They get like that. They become irreligious, atheistic, essentially. They make an observation of the wickedness on the earth and see that mankind is running mankind themselves. And so they become I'm just going to live today and tomorrow and the next day. That's it. Irreligion is the 3rd fastest growing religion in the world. Just having no religion, just believing nothing. When the majority of the earth used to believe in some kind of God. It is written in God's word, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. In Matthew 24, it'll further state as I continue to finish reading from there, it is written therein that because of an increase in lawlessness, the love of many will grow cold. Who is love? God. God is the author of love, and in and of himself, he is love. And so when then there's all this wickedness where people are doing whatever that is right in their own eyes, people lose love, they lose charity, they lose sight of God. And so they become irreligious. Christianity, otherwise known as the one true God, is decreasing at an increasing rate in its adoption by people. Islam has taken us over. Satanism is not accounted for as to how big it's thriving, but we know it's intense over there because look at South Africa, look at my life. And a whole bunch of people choose to believe absolutely nothing because they feel safe in their ignorance. They feel safe in their ignorance. Do you know what that's called? The great apostasy. It's called the great falling away, the great deception. People walking away from the one true God in favor of a phantom, in favor of a myth, and in favor of nothing at all. That is what's happened. But it was predicted. So when you start to see Christianity growing slowly in comparison to how it used to grow, it's over. When I say there is no other time like this in history, understand there is no other time like this in history. There's no other time in history when Christianity was not dominant. In the 20th century, which was just yesterday, the dominant religion in the country, in the world, was Christianity by a massive landslide above Islam. Huge landslide. And then we hop over on into the 21st century and look at all of this apostasy. It's increasing in increasing measure, and there is nothing ever before seen like it. When I say it's over, it's over. It has not always been happening like this. Every generation has its ups and downs, peaks and troughs, flukes and passes. No, it's never been like this before. Literally, this is the first time ever. So how in the world can I ever look forward to a husband and some children? Look at how irresponsible my country is. It's about to be cut to pieces by God, but it doesn't even know because it's not reading the word of God. Then they will deliver you after tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And because of an increase in lawlessness, the love of many will grow cold. Exactly what I've been saying. Paraphrasing it. Many will fall away, betray one another, hate one another, and many false prophets will rise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. Speaking about these many false prophets, how many times do I have to keep on complaining? South Africa, you think you're born again because you see signs and wonders. Lerata Bushiri, Lerata Hubert Angel, you are besotted beside yourself with adoration for Prophet Lovi. Men like these, you love them because they can show you wiggling bodies on the floor, gyrating therein with Kundalini spirits. Before he passed away, you were massive fans of TB Joshua. Such things as these. You would much rather sit around in a circus, theatrical, carnival-y church before you will actually sit down under the word of God being preached in a church that does not have as many theatrics. And so because you imagine theatrics are the equivalent or tantamount of the move of the Holy Spirit, you are exchanging the truth of God for a lie, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of demons, not loving the truth, taking pleasure in your unrighteousness. And so God is obviously going to send you a strong delusion. So strong this delusion is going to be that Islam will be the dominant religion in the world. Number 2, a whole bunch of people are going to be irreligious. And number 3, an untabulated statistic of how many Satanists are on the earth is going to be creeping up your skirts. Your countries are going to be cantankerous. They're going to hate Israel without knowing what they're doing. And then they're going to be heaved away, cut to pieces. Because for trying to heave away Jerusalem, God will send you a strong delusion that you will think that Christianity is a dying religion because Islam took over. And Christianity is a dying religion because a lot of people, if they don't want to do Islam or Buddhism or anything, they would rather stay irreligious, and that's the primary thought. You think that just because there is a decline in the uptake of Christianity, that there is no Jesus, except he displays that he is God because he said these things would happen in advance. He showed that there would be a global takeover by all other religions above Christianity towards the end, because people are going to fall away. They're going to walk away from the words of life in favor of myths and destructive heresies, doctrines of demons. They will turn aside to them and so condemn themselves. It has been written off in God's word that that's what's going to happen. So how under heaven are you imaginative that Jesus is a dead God and that Christianity is a dying religion? Nah, that's what's going to happen before the tribulation. During the tribulation, there will be a complete annihilation, or at least attempt at it, of Christianity. And then at the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ, there will be a massacring of everybody that rejected it, and a re-establishment of Christianity as the dominant religion, and likely the only one that is not going to get some people hurt out here in these streets. In the millennial reign of Jesus Christ, the Lord will not allow a world to walk away from worshiping him when he is the creator. He will let them get real close to knocking out the lost ones of his beloved ones, and then he will destroy the world and then say, look, this place is for my children. I said that. You don't get to kick them out. It is written in the Beatitudes in Matthew 5 that the meek shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. This is our planet. And so anybody trying to take us over and coup us is rather going to be the one that's cut into pieces. Opposite. The day never arrives when Islam truly takes over. Even the Antichrist does not prosper to take over Christianity. He keeps, that's why he keeps beheading them. There are too many of us to go around. And at the end of all of that lunacy, the Lord returns with a whole bunch of his saints, whole bunch of his holy ones, and basically restores the order to what it was supposed to be. But before then, there will be a great deal of falling away. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. I'm not going to read the rest of Matthew. King 24, but I wanted to actually read. Should I just read it? Because I'm super pressed to pee. Let me just read all of it, all right, without expanding further, because I want to be done. I want to help you understand that in the middle of all this, people are also living life as normal. They're marrying and being given in marriage. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand at this point, this is the tribulation. This is when basically the 3.5-year mark of the tribulation. So what I've just read from the top of Matthew 24 all the way up until 1 to 14, that's the world basically in the run up to the rapture. Then once the rapture happens, the rest of these things start to happen. So I'm not going to be here when this happens. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house, and let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days, pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and no ever will be. And if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders. So already there were false Christs spoken of in the early part of Matthew 24. These ones are especially prolific because they're in the tribulation. If possible, for false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. So if they say to you, look, he is in the wilderness, do not go out. If they say, look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever the corpse is, the vultures will gather. Okay, and then immediately after, so that was the tribulation, and now this is the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, and he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near. My point exactly. Right? At the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But concerning that day or the hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven nor the Son, but the Father only. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. This is what I was talking about. All right. About that short that I saw on YouTube with that lady all pregnant. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then two men will be left in this. Do you see what I'm saying? Right. So this now here, I believe, speaks of the rapture. So God is saying before this rapture comes, that is going to bring about this tribulation where you're going to see the abomination causing desolation. People are going to be marrying, giving in marriage, and everything's going to be normal until sudden disaster hits them. And this disaster, before it happens, two men will be in the field, one will be taken, the other left behind, etc., etc. So God is saying you're going to be doing life as normal, then rapture's going to happen. Then you're going to go through this. Okay. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then two men will be in the field, one will be taken and one left. Two women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one left. Therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom his master has set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is the servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and says to himself, and begins to beat his fellow servants and eats and drinks with drunkards, the master of the servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and put him with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's all of Matthew 24. Guys, that passage that speaks about one will be taken, one will be left behind. It has to speak of the rapture because nobody is going to be calm, nobody's going to be chill, nobody's going to be able to buy, sell, do anything normal. And by the time the tribulation comes to an end, there's going to be so much disaster on the earth that nobody's going to be having a normal life. So it speaks about us in this side, where people are still marrying, being given in marriage. Nobody is marrying, being given in marriage with the mark of the beast in their head after being plagued with loathsome sores all over their bodies for taking the mark of the beast. Nobody is doing that. So that speaks about the rapture. So one needs to read, therefore, Matthew 21 with an understanding that the Lord speaks about how life is going to be just before the rapture, what life is going to be like during the tribulation, and what is going to be the case in point, what to look out for in the run-up to the rapture. So you look out for Matthew 24, 1 to 14 in the run-up to the rapture. Then Matthew 24, pretty much 36 to the rest of it to the very end. That is like hints. Look out for this. And then Matthew 24 from 15 to 31 is the actual tribulation. Please go culminating in the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. And this Matthew 24 is nicely paralleled with the book of Revelation, but that's another story for another day. You see it with your bare eyes, type establishment thing, if you have been given eyes to see and ears to hear, and if you actually are studious in the scriptures. So when I saw that lady, the very pregnant one, That was all happy. I wanted to have joy until I stepped out of that short, and then I saw everything else that's going on, and I'm like, you know what? Look up and lift up your head, for your redemption draweth nigh. It's the end. People are marrying, being given in marriage, falling pregnant. They are having lives, and men are looking at women like me like we're pretty hobos. That's what's happening. But so too is there tumult in the Middle East. Luke 21 also says that when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you know the coming of the Son of Man is nigh. Go read the Bible. Parallel Matthew 24 to Luke 21 to the book of Revelation, and you will see where we find ourselves. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. That's what God says in those letters to the churches. I live in a combination of Pergamum, where Satan has his throne, and Thyatira, where they tolerate that woman Jezebel, and Laodicea, where everybody's lukewarm, and Sardis, where everybody is basically with a reputation for being alive even though they're dead. I live in a country that has just given itself over to so many idols. It's just ridiculous, and nobody appears to be coming up for air. And all I can do is look only to the rapture, look only to Jesus, because when I try to look to a future, I get bombarded by love spells, dikorobela, people calling me a pretty hobo, people imagining that I will one day finally abandon Jesus because everybody else has fallen away, irreligious folk with whose love has grown cold because of an increase in lawlessness, out here ransacking my future precisely because they don't believe that I have one. So what else can I look forward to when my ex-boyfriend is out here still trying to come back into my life 12 years after we broke up? What else am I supposed to look forward to when all of my former friends are still busy going back to the drawing board every so often when they watch my content on YouTube? They have been trickling to my content slowly but surely, and that ought to be a good thing. The reason why they're trickling to it is because they're making an observation of the terribleness of the times, but they're not repenting. They're just going back to the drawing board. I just spoke yesterday about one who angered me severely yesterday, who is a fashion designer, that came all up in my grill, literally spewing vitriol at a woman that is already suffering so much. And it's like, you only came to my content because you're making an observation of the world right now, and that it's frankly just unacceptable, and you're still not repenting. That's the world we live in. It's the great apostasy. They have fallen away. They're backslidden. I don't know what they are. And the only thing that's going to snap them out of whatever it is that they're in right now is the rapture. I feel like that's a thing. Of course, that leaves time to be fulfilled. Only time will tell. That's what I'm getting at. But bottom line is, there is just so much telling of the veracity of us being there at that very time. It's just too telling. There's too much evil. And like I said, my country, deadbeat. One of the nations trying to heave away the heavy stone that Jerusalem is. How in the world was I born in one of the countries that God is going to squash under his thumb? How is that even my life? That is the world that we are in. And if you don't want to believe me, you don't have to. But you're going to ultimately be shocked that you did not listen to me literally intently for all the time that you could tell that something was wrong, and yet essentially decided to go and call the bluff of a person that wasn't even bluffing. I hope you've been edified. I'm signing out in the name of Christ, Crank K. Peace.